welcome to our secondary Cognita break time with LBQ. I'm joined by Sean and Stephen and Anne. I'm going to go around and let them introduce themselves in a moment. And I'm Heather from Learning by Questions. And this is just a quick 15 minutes, specifically around science at the secondary level and how LBQ works in that subject. But the guys I'm with are going to tell you a little more about that. Sean, I'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about your role and your LBQ story. Where did that begin?
So yes, my name's Sean. I work at Northbridge House, Canterbury. I'm a science teacher by training. And for the school, I'm actually the deputy head. And I've been here since we opened in 2014. And my experience with LBQ, I guess it started because of COVID and the lockdown and us needing a wider and broader range of activities for students that we could actually tell that they were engaging with and that were a little bit more student-centered. And obviously we've transferred it as we've come out of lockdown. It's obviously a good tool to use in the classroom just to support students' learning.
So it's been just as good. It's not just for Christmas, it's for life. It's carried on being useful back in the classroom, has it?
Absolutely, because I think it's got a lot of key features that I particularly thought were quite good, which is it's the planning of the questions already done for you that are linked to the curriculum that you can use. So it kind of cuts out that kind of planning time, so you can kind of just focus on more about the kids, I suppose, and their learning, as well as, you know, you get live kind of updates as to how the kids are progressing through each question. So you can really focus on the kids that need a little bit of help. So it kind of, for me, it frees up me in the classroom so that the students are kind of getting on with the activity, and it allows me to act as a facilitator and as an intervention person to move around the different students and see how they're getting on. And if I've seen they've got something wrong, then I can immediately act, whereas I don't have to wait so much as if it was a quiz or something like that.
So it sounds like feels like you're able to teach more because you're actually able to get in more rather than what people from the outside might think, oh, this is just another software program that they're running and I just kind of sit back and babysitting kids on iPads. It's not like that at all. And how you were nodding then listening to Sean. Is that your story? Tell us a bit about your classroom.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I've found as well. As we've been using it, it allows you to sort of see as you go around, you can have a quick look with the colour coding, who's getting on with it and doing okay with it, but who needs a little bit more support. And as everybody's working, you're able to target the bits that need to, and it can allow you to sort of focus in on something that a specific student needs. So particularly at the minute, we've got a lot of gaps from COVID, with students that have been off for a couple of weeks and missed things. So we use it regularly as a review, and it gives me a chance to let the pupils review what they've been doing, but also with the pupils that have missed it and haven't had the chance to catch up yet, use it as a focus for sort of relearning that and teaching those knowledge and concepts that they've missed.
So do you feel like it supports your judgment in the classroom? It gives you a platform to be able to make decisions as opposed to making decisions on your behalf?
Definitely, yeah. As Sean said, sometimes, you know, you do a task and then you've got to wait to collect any results. You've got to wait till the end of the quiz or the end of the topic or till you've marked it. Whereas with this, you just sort of see instantly where they're at, and you can pause it, you can focus in as a class if you see they're all struggling, or just target those individuals that need it.
And those children are getting the feedback themselves at the same time to everything they're answering. So even if you're not able to be with them at that moment, they are effectively have a teacher on their shoulder. Stephen, you were just nodding then. Tell us a bit about your story. How did you begin with LBQ?
I work in Meon Cross down in New Fareham in Stubbington. A bit like Sean, I've been working here. It's my 6th year. I've been head of science here. I found out about it. We were sent a load of links to different things during the lockdown, and I tried it and looked at a number of them. And I thought that this looked particularly interesting. So I did use it for similar reasons to Sean during the lockdown. But I've continued to use it quite a lot since I've come back, and I've got more. I've sort of opened it up to the other teachers in my department to see if they wanted to try it for biology. I mainly teach physics, so I got the biology and chemistry teachers to look at it, and they really like it as well. They find it useful for very similar reasons to what you were saying. It's gives you quick feedback. You can look and obviously see if individual pupils are struggling. But what I do also like is if you can see there's particular questions that are, a lot of them are struggling, and then you can bring those questions up on the screen, can't you? And you can talk through and explain them. So it's just intervening. It makes it easier to see what you need to intervene on, and actually frees up time because you can then not spend time on the stuff that actually they're not finding difficult. So I find that useful. You can also set differentiated tasks as well, which are quite good. Sometimes they have different levels of questions and the pupils can either you can direct them or they can self-select to do that. And I think they've got more of a desire when they're doing this to want to do well. I find that they really do, and that they'll help each other, and they'll ask you for help when they're struggling rather than you going around and nagging them. They're actually wanting to know about things, and it does actually give them some information, doesn't it? When they get things wrong, they can see back some feedback about why they've got things wrong. So I find that really useful.
Say you've got it wrong, it gives you a hint as to why you might have got it wrong, so you can have another go and maybe build up some confidence and resilience. It
does. It also gives them, in some of the areas that I've used, particularly I was looking at radioactivity and radioactive half-lives, and it gives them sometimes quite a lot of questions on a similar thing in the questions are sort of arranged differently, and it's quite nice because then they get lots of practice at seeing the questions in the different formats, and it's a good bank to have, and they get lots of practice at that. So they've found that challenging, I think, at times, but certainly helped them to move on their learning. I think it's quite hard sometimes to find lots of different questions in different ways when you're looking elsewhere, and they're all collected together for us. So I like that.
Everybody's nodding to that, and there's a collective nod of yes. I cannot find enough questions on radioactive half-lives, spin in different ways so that they can keep having another go at something. That's brilliant. So you mentioned then, Steve, about freeing up some time, and we know that doesn't mean to say that teachers have got bags of time, because the moment you're able to reclaim some, you're using it. But are you able to use time maybe in a more effective way, a more impactful way, because you're not trying to spend time marking or doing as much planning time?
I think so. Yeah, you are. I think because you are able to really target where you need to put that time in, and you're not spending time trying to figure out. Sometimes in your lessons, at times you're trying to work out what you need to spend the time on, and I think it's fairly quickly there, isn't it? You can see from the feedback from the pupils in the lesson straight away where they're going. It's also quite useful because you can pop it up on the board, and you can see, the pupils aren't named, although you can show the names if you want, but I don't usually. I don't know what other people do. And you can see where they're struggling, but which banks of pupils are getting on. And also, I think the way you can set the tasks is when you're revising something, you can put 2 or 3 different types of tasks up there, apart from differentiated tasks. So there might be some children that know a particular area very well, and other children don't. So they can select the area that they want to do. And I sometimes actually get the children to, I put the list of the tasks on a particular area of the topic and get them to tell me which ones they'd like me to set for them, and then they can have a crack at those. So it does get good engagement from the children, I think, and I know the other.
Do you have the LBQ groan? Have you ever paused it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That we had our ambassador meeting the other night, and said, put your hand up if you've heard the LBQ groan, which is when you press pause. And who'd have thought that you could stop children from working and they would be upset about that? And how are the quality of the resources on there? Do you feel like you're able to put your finger on something that you need for tomorrow's lesson easier than you have done before?
Definitely, yeah. They're all there. They're organised by key stage, and you can find exactly what you need. I've even found some of the primary school useful for some of the year 7s as they're coming in. You can sort of assess where they're at and instantly get a feeling about your class before you've even started the topic, because often it links to things that they've done before. So having those different levels of similar style questions really helps as well.
So how much time would you say that it saves you in a week, or that you're able to reclaim, would you say roughly?
It definitely does save a lot of time. At the start of the week, if you just spend 10-15 minutes looking through at the topics that you're doing, adding them to your planner, it saves.
And then no marking afterwards.
Yeah,
this is definitely time that you're able to then reinvest, coming up with other things for the lesson that you'd really like to do.
Yeah.
So how about the bottom line here, academic progress, Sean? In the length of time that you've been using it, has it helped you help the children achieve more academically, would you say? Certainly, Anne was mentioning filling those gaps, especially after COVID. We haven't had any stats or anything like that. We don't have stats for science, but we might not have data that would prove it. But what's your gut instinct about the difference that having LBQs made?
I think it's kind of two things. I think we're very fortunate to have launched it at our school during COVID, so it kind of minimized the gaps that we had in the first place. But also, if there are gaps, it allows you to narrow them, and we definitely see that within our students. And I just find that the students want to progress on it. They do, just like a lot of things on the computer, they kind of do see it as a bit of a game, and they want to get it right, and they want to redo it, and they find it fun. And I also think it does save a lot of time, not just in the planning, but just the time at the photocopier. You don't need to worry so much about having to photocopy all the time. And just
You're probably saving a few forests there, Sean, aren't we?
Absolutely. And I think one of the unique things about this one in particular is kind of what Stephen was saying, whereas it's actually got a good volume of questions. I find that even textbooks and even worksheets, it's kind of, they do one question, and if they get it wrong, well, they don't get to really practice it again. And so that's where progress is really shown, is actually learning from your mistakes and repeating similar questions, not the same, and being able to have the opportunity to demonstrate that you've done it. Because unless you have that experience of correcting your mistakes and getting it right and getting that verification of how you're doing, then the students might feel that they haven't learned when they have. So it kind of is gratifying for them and for teachers, because you can see it as the lesson progresses, and students love that.
Yeah, there is definitely a power in the wrong answer, isn't there? As long as you've got an opportunity then to have another go.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot. The funny thing that I saw when kids were using it in together in the classroom beyond COVID is I notice also it kind of is about that peer support. They do talk to each other as they're on each other's computers trying to tackle the question, and they use a language that not necessarily I'll use with them. So I think that kind of idea of the zone of proximal development is to me is quite an important aspect of collaborative learning, and they're definitely doing that. So there is still a social kind of aspect to using it. It's not just that they're on their own, heads down in their computer. It does foster discussions, and the questions are short enough that they're not necessarily having to be so engrossed in one aspect of it that actually they can move through them quite quickly.
I think that leads on to what I was going to ask you next, actually, about well-being. I mean, when we were all isolated with COVID, we didn't get to be together, and we didn't have that connection with one another that being back in the classroom does bring. And this idea of being able to be together, growing confidence and resilience for pupils, so you can have another go. It's okay to get things wrong. It's good to get things wrong. You learn from that and move on. And also maybe well-being for teachers, for yourselves, because of this time, because you've got the resources there for you. Has it made a difference to feeling more empowered, enabled, in control, head above water? Stephen, you're nodding.
Yeah, I think it has. Yeah, it has. It's sort of helped what you were saying before about the primary stuff. We actually teach some year 5s and 6s, and we haven't yet looked at the Key Stage 2 resources in detail, but we are going to look at that to see what we can use at Key Stage 2. And then also, you're quite right. I think that when they come to you, you can use it as a sort of pre-learning assessment, just to see. And it's a low stakes, low pressure. Let's just see what you already know. And I would say to the children, so it helps us, and it does help us to plan our lessons, to decide what they know and what they might struggle with. And then it really is a nice tool that saves us time and means you're not wasting time by teaching stuff that people already know. So I think that's quite useful. And I find with certainly with the year 11s, they are quite liking using that now to target revision as well. They're finding that really, and some of them will come to me actually and want, they like it. And you're quite right, Sean, what you were saying about the social thing, I think is really true. I've noticed that children who wouldn't normally have wanted other pupils to help them are getting pupils to and discussing those things and sometimes I've had a few come along in pairs at lunchtime saying they're doing a little bit of revision. We've got some mocks coming up soon, and they, can you set us some stuff to have a look at lunchtime as a pair on this area or that area. So I think you're right, they enjoy it. They feel it. It's less high stakes, isn't it? It's just a way of learning together and practicing things. So yeah.
Well, I don't think there can be a better endorsement, Steve, than the pupils coming to you in their lunchtime to do extra LBQ revision.
I've had a few.
That's brilliant. I've got one last question for you all before we've all got to get back to the classroom. The bell's going to ring and so on. If I took LBQ away from you tomorrow and you couldn't have it, how would you feel about that? Stunned faces, silence. And how would you feel about that if you couldn't use it anymore? It just didn't exist.
I'd be really disappointed. It's something that I've definitely worked into on my planning and my teaching on a regular basis. So it would be missed, and I think the pupils in my classes would miss it as well. It is something, as both of you have said, that they do really enjoy. It's something that sort of helped to build their confidence back up and their resilience as they've come back to the classroom. It's given them that confidence that, I might get it wrong the first time, but if I keep going, I've got that opportunity to get it right. And I think it's very hard to find something like that will work for such a large variety of pupils.
Yeah. Sean, how would you feel?
Yeah,
Does it exist? We're going to cut it all off tomorrow. You're going to go to your login and there's going to be nothing there.
Yeah, I'd say disappointed as well. I would say, like, it's just one of those tools that once you start using it, you just want to use it every day, sort of thing. It's like it just becomes part of your arsenal. And because it's so easy to pick up and use, and the interface is quite friendly. It's just it's just like a calculator. It just becomes part and parcel, I suppose.
I always wondered whether it would help people who are non-specialist teachers as well, who are coming and maybe, there's the vocabulary in there, that the curriculum is up to date on it. It would give other staff members in the department who maybe weren't as confident in an area or so an extra boost.
I totally agree with that. Sorry. I also think it's great for cover. So some of our staff have been off, and it's a great way to ensure that they're still learning some of the content that they've got to know, rather than it just be bookwork. So I do think there's a real opportunity there, because the staff, and it also helps when you're not feeling well, you're sick, or if they've had COVID, teachers' well-being, it's making it easier for them to get better.
Fantastic. Stephen, the last word comes to you.
I think the same thing. I think the children would be disappointed. I find it useful to have.
What would your lunchtime revision group do?
Also, as a backup in lessons, and if the kids get through the work a bit quicker than you expect or something, you can give them something that's really useful and purposeful to do. So I think that's good, and I think it would take us a lot more time, wouldn't it, to have to find all these different resources if they didn't go there. It's quite, as we were saying earlier, people were saying earlier, it's very quick to just scan through and see what the questions are, if there's a suitable bank for these kids or these classes, and it takes very little time. So it gives you something else, as you're right, in your arsenal to develop and use with the children. So yeah, we would miss it.
Brilliant. Well, you guys have all been a joy. Thank you so much for letting me take over your break time. Steve, I think there's pupils behind you waiting for some extra work from LBQ, literally knocking on your doors to do. I would love to catch up with you guys again, maybe in the spring term, and see if we can have how things have progressed in your classroom over this academic year, the first half of the academic year, and see if you're seeing some significant strides in academic progress as well. Thank you so much, everyone. You've been brilliant.
Okay.